Hello, everyone, and welcome to your horoscope for the week of April the 1st till 7th, 2024. We have quite an interesting week ahead of us, and this for a couple of different reasons. On one hand, we are in the period between two very powerful eclipses, so it is intensely and heavily karmic. The other reason is that we are at the beginning of the Mercury retrograde season, which begins on the 1st of April and ends on the 24th of April. So, this is where, at the very beginning of the week on Monday, Mercury is standing still in the sky. So, its symbolism is greatly amplified, and its shadow quality is predominant. And in the sign of Aries, it is very fiery, it is very quick, very assertive. So this is when the Mercury retrograde chaos begins. And because it affects Aries the self quite intensely, that automatically, by logic, means that it will affect greatly our relationships. So we have to be prepared for that. The other hand is that most of these energies are in a way one-sided because most of the planets and this week even the moon is in just one hemisphere of the sky. So Pisces has Mars, Saturn, and Neptune. At the beginning of the week, even Venus. And then there is a strong emphasis on Aries with the sun being in it, Mercury, Chiron, North Node, and Taurus. Okay, Aquarius with Pluto, but that also makes it just one hemisphere. So you can imagine that certain areas of our lives and even on the world stage are strongly emphasized while their opposites suffer passively, suffer, of course, suffer the consequence in that sense. Not necessarily that it is, you know, the classic suffering, even though in the world you can imagine that there is even a lot of the classic exception of suffering. So these combinations of energies are gonna, in a way, take us into the twilight zone. That is how this week is going to feel like. And before I get into the details, I would like to wish a very happy birthday on the 3rd of April to a champion of justice, a true warrior for righteousness, Vlad. Thank you so much for being an inspiration for all of us. And if you'd like to know more specifics and aspects of this Mercury retrograde season that is about to start just on Monday, check out a specially dedicated video that I have for this. I'm going to link down below. And also, I would like to wish a very happy Easter to everyone who celebrates it now. So let us begin. Let me take the screen back to Monday. So the 1st of April. Now, I have to mention that, especially here in Eastern Europe, 1st of April is like Fool's Day, where people usually play practical jokes on everyone they can. And, we have to take it lightheartedly and no offense, you know what I mean? But I would really not recommend that on this specific 2024 1st of April because Mercury, well, Mercury is in Aries, so very impulsive, very, very impulsive. The other thing is that Jupiter is very close to Uranus, so it amplifies Uranus, and Uranus is the unexpected. But Uranus is also our nervous system, central nervous system, in that sense. So, lightning bolt, unexpected. We don't know how people are going to react, especially that things are very heated with this strong Aries combination, Sun, very comfortable and powerful, in its exaltation sign of Aries. So that literally means that people tend to take things very personally. And it is this week when the sun meets with the North Node, highlighting it strongly. But that automatically means that the sun will oppose the South Node in Libra, again, relationships. So expect things to be heated, relationship wise, communication, sharing of information, contradictory plans and interests. And interest is a keyword this period, not just this week, but also all of this period, because sun, the self, and what we project, our own light in the sign of Aries. So it has to be self-centered, like it or not. This isn't where a certain humbleness is actually not a wise choice. But that by no means does it mean arrogance and self-bloated. That no. Because actually Aries operates at best when it is disciplined, like a warrior, like a soldier, like a fighter. A berserker relies on chance, so it can very well fail. Aries is also the berserker, of course, but that doesn't mean it's the right expression of it. Right meaning that would resonate with this period. However, expect to see a lot of berserking out there playing out in any way, shape, and form. From a street fight, and those Italian movies where there's this block of flats or a house, and the wife is screaming from the window and throwing the husband's stuff out the window. And of course, everyone's watching. Expect that to be part of the scenery. And needless to say, on the world stage, media, information, Mercury retrograde. When Mercury is retrograde, it is more like Loki the trickster. So you can imagine. One of the effects is that, everything is a lie, but in an aggressive way. But not because the information itself is even questioned, but because the deception factor is so ongoing that the self defends itself. So every information is now treated as a lie and not as the truth that comes in. So this is where we are a little bit paranoid. But at the same time, this also, in a way, heats up cons, fishing, the typical Mercury retrograde. Because it's also in a fire sign. Uh, this isn't even the typical case of malfunction, especially devices. This is the case where it's like overheating, so short circuits, or when it goes a bit boom. So all of this chaos and our very unfriendly attitude, and I'm so sorry to say it like this, but this is the best way to describe the energy. The unfriendliness of Mercury retrograde in Aries. Why? The ram. What does the ram do, especially when it's agitated, or especially when it is in heat, mating heat? Well, it knocks everyone and everything out of the way without even thinking about it. And the heat, that part is beginning because also this week Venus enters into the sign of Aries. So Venus is not her Libra self, her dignified self. It is actually the opposite. So she's very easy and she has these fiery needs. Like, you can imagine that also Venus comes from water sign Pisces, our hormones. And especially at the moment of ingress, so going into that 0 degrees, hormones are still boiling a little bit. So this makes people aggressive, like the ram. That is the very, very best symbolism. The ram, an agitated or angry ram. That is how it's gonna feel like. So we're gonna walk on glass, on trail of cinders. Trail of cinders, actually very astrologically there. The south node being for this last moment of this present Aries Libra axis nodal transit in via combusta, so the path of fire, with relationships, one-on-one alliances. So this is going to be part of the week. Now, again, I must highlight, all of this is going to either be amplified by the karmic power of the period between two eclipses. So very, very fated elements here. And it feels fated. It feels under pressure, but that pressure is more spiritual. And even people who do not lead a spiritual lifestyle, their psyche feels a strained pressure. So everyone feels the pressure. It doesn't matter what you believe in or what you don't. When it is this powerful, we just feel it. Look, I won't exaggerate when I say even animals feel it. And this fated element may very well be linked to the Mercury retrograde period and the chaos that affects our relationships. Because this, when I say relationships, this can very well be contractual. You decide out of an Aries impulse to invest in something, and that is fated. And it comes as a last minute, as something possesses you. When you feel that symbolic possession, you know that it's actually what you need to do and not the mistake. But it can also play out simultaneously, where there's all that chaos with the Mercury retrograde season and everything in it, and fate also knocks at the door, almost splitting your attention into two. Fate is playing out big time, and there's these Mercury retrograde elements in your mundane life. But for example, electronics breaking is more than enough. Or journeys, especially travels, last minute changes, because Aries, but those changes can come from you, your mood, your attitude, or whatever. Depending on where this 27 to 15 degrees of Aries falls into your personal chart. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I have a free tutorial video, and I'm going to link to it. It attempts to show you how to look these up in your chart. So this is a very, very powerful beginning of the week, I would say. And on Monday, basically the highlight is that Mercury stands still in the sky at 27 degrees of Aries. So this is the start of the Mercury retrograde season. Of course, what this Mercury retrograde is for us personally, the themes are going to start showing up. A communication or something within you. Aries, the head. Your instinct, root chakra, tell you something. And this time you listen, but that might rearrange everything in your life. You know what I mean? And this is also the period when the battering ram, whatever comes up at this moment, well, it doesn't matter anymore if your life is or not permissive of this, because you're prepared to break boundaries. On one hand, On the 20th of April, the upcoming conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus, without a doubt, that means breaking boundaries for everyone in their own personal, unique, distinctive way. Inner or outer, but something is gonna break. Something new is gonna step into our lives from that hole in the boundary. So it will be like a portal, like a quantum leap, if you will. So we are already feeling this, and this is already setting up in our lives, individually and collectively alike, because these two planets are already conjunct and getting closer and closer to perfection at the 21 degree of Taurus. On the other hand, Uranus himself will move to 21 degree of Taurus this week. So in a way, it is covering new ground. Maybe not fully new ground, but it's already revolutionizing what it has to going through its shadow path. And Jupiter will move to 18 degree. So Jupiter is already covering new ground. So this is where we already feel this upgrade energy. So our beings are in a way in a preparation. So things are gonna start settling down, as in marking the main themes in our life, because awareness is a major part of it. Awareness is the key to everything. Uranus is awareness. For the big themes, when we become aware of them, that is already a major step towards being with the flow. Because when we are aware what the universe fate, the fated element of the eclipse, and the Mercury retrograde, what needs to solve itself, the Mercury retro, the problem solving aspect, the positive aspect of it. So when we become aware of that, we are 1 foot in the flow. So we make it easier for ourselves. Now, the other thing is that even though this is not necessarily the major theme of this week, but maybe next week, Chiron is being activated slowly and surely by the sun getting closer and closer to it. At the end of the week on Sunday, it's only 1 degree apart, as we'll see in a bit. So our wounds, I am the self wound. It doesn't matter if it's like innate, because Aries is very much our genetic heritage as well. The information that we step into this world with, and that will activate throughout our lives. The first house ascendant type of energy. So there is that. Or it can be something that we received quite recently, a fresher wound. And an I am wound can very well come from relationships, one-on-one alliances, or what the other, even if the other is the world, in a larger sense, reflected back at us. It broke something within the I am. So those wounds and the path towards healing, Mercury retrograde, it, regardless whatever else it's going to be about for us personally, one of the themes that is non-optional, so to speak, is healing, and especially that I am kind of wound for everyone in their own way, whatever area of life it falls into. But there is an I am factor because it's your life. Where is the wound there, and how will it be understood and integrated? So there is that part that is common for everyone. How do we heal it? Or where is our wounding or wound leading us towards? It can be a guidance factor. Let me give you an example. If someone receives like a broken arm, that's a wound, and they will have to go to physio to recover, let's say. And in that physio area or whatever, they meet a very important karmic ally. You can imagine there's a wound, but that wound led us, the healing actually led us somewhere. This can take place in so very many ways. But no, it's really, really up to your own unique life story to see if it's more about the wound and healing it, or where, or in a different polarity, where the healing the wound, the condition for that leads you to a fated path, one way or another. So there's also that. So this is the beginning of the week. Now moving on to the second, this is when and also I just want to mention, and because this aspect is gonna stay with us more or less all through the week, asteroid Ceres holds a trine with Jupiter. So Ceres and Jupiter, this is really good news for humanitarian aid, for the famine situations in everywhere in the world where it's the case. This is hopeful because Jupiter comes with justice and Uranus comes with ingenious solutions. So, and Mercury retrograde is really good for fixing that which was improvised, but it had errors, faults in it. So innovation type of energy is. And as you can see, Jupiter and Uranus are really close. So we're already sensing this, and this is already setting up in our lives. Even if, let's say, we're like late bloomers, because that's actually a valid energy. There is such a thing. Some fruits are much better ripe, well ripe. You know what I mean? There are certain souls and energies which are like much more efficient in a divine way or in an even practical way, right? So you can imagine that those people will have this energy of a late bloomer. But that doesn't mean that they're like in an in a humorous way that's safe from this energy, because they have relations, friends, family, partners, children, work. They have relations, so it can manifest in the lives of others. So you know what I mean. No one's safe from this energy. So moving on the 3rd, Venus is conjunct Neptune. Now, from an artistic perspective, from a romantic perspective, from a dreamy perspective, from a substance use kind of perspective, this is like a siren song. It's very alluring for artists, for musicians, for anyone who works with the spirit or art. It's a fantastic period, even though it's Pisces. It can be melancholic, yet it is the good type of melancholic, if you know what I mean. But this is like a fountain of inspiration, regardless of the polarity of it, let's say. Because sometimes melancholy and, like sacred sadness, for example, sadness that we have because we feel compassionate towards someone in trouble, it's almost like we share that burden willingly, but doing so is also satisfactory. We wouldn't have it any other way. There can be that, but that's positive, that's compassionate, that is good, from a spiritual perspective. But there can be simply the magic, the inspiration, the surrealness of life, the high of highs. Imagine if you're in a romantic relationship. There can be a moment when something is pure magic with that partner, or fresh couples, or stuff like that. But please take my warning. And this is on the 3rd of April. The high as you go, there will be a low soon. Because this lasts a day, okay, 1 or 2 days before and after, let's say, but there will be a low. Without a doubt. As Venus reaches 29 degree of Pisces. And I'll speak about it in just a tiny bit. But this is the high. So if you're an artist, if you're a spiritualist, magician, whatever, healer, psychotherapist, tap into this, milk it, use the inspiration. Not so much if this is alcohol or substances, there has to be moderation. Thank goodness for Saturn in Pisces, right? The limitation, the responsibility. Because otherwise it can be deadly. So, especially that because Neptune is going to that anoretic 29 degree of Pisces this year, we already see its shadow side, the drug crises in the world. And I mean where the substance abuse drowns the person fully by. There's no salvation anymore. This is where when someone's drowning, there comes a point where there's no way up, no way out from the deep. You know what I mean? So we will see that, sadly. But we only see the first stages, which gives us time to prepare. And this energy also basically has the cure written on it because Pisces dual sign, especially that the two fish move away from each other. So the opposite. When there's a problem, the opposite is usually the solution with Pisces, and that is love. Because why do people use escapism in radical ways? Because they feel lonely and they feel unloved or unlovable. And after the psychological manipulation and drowning, again, Neptune in Pisces, but also Jupiter in Pisces, expanding that, April 2022, the COVID and all of the whatever the media did to basically people, that brainwashing and the distancing and making people be strangers to one another, almost enemies with one another. The paranoia, we can feel that effects. And this is which actually led to this. People need to escape that loneliness and that coldness. It's almost like they don't even belong to the same species, the alienation with substances. And that is sad. But what is good is that we can cure it with love. The cure is known and there. Can we generate enough of it? That's the question that I do believe, in a way, we are answering as a species now. But the answer first has to conclude the inner conflict. Because what's happening right now, if we are an organism, then what's happening is like a fever that is burning our organs, an inner conflict. We are in a fever state. Will that fever, let's say it like this, what will that fever do to us? Uranus will definitely, the Uranus Jupiter conjunction on the 20th of April, and the aftermath of the 8th of April total solar eclipse will definitely be part of the answer to that. But we are living that right now. We're already living that. So you can imagine whatever happens in our lives, even individually, or should I say especially individually, Because, okay, Pluto in Aquarius is collective. Yes, Aquarius is dual, dichotomous, both the collective and the component, the individual, the two waves of the glyph of Aquarius, you know, this. There's that. But North Node in Aries, Eris in Aries, Sun in Aries, everything in Aries really emphasizes the self. This is where the self is a bit more, yeah, emphasized basically than the collective. So you can imagine the importance of the events happening in our lives right now. All of us are sucked into our stories. If not, then to another Libra, you know, the opposite sign, then into the story drama of another. May that be family member, partner, child, anything. Or Libra, a principalistic crisis, if you will. Or Pisces, Saturn and Pisces, something to do with religion or faith. Religion is it's part of the fever right now. And Pluto in the sign of Aquarius is changing our perception of it, which means big changes are coming in the next 20 years. And symbolically, look, the moon is conjunct Pluto on the 3rd of April. So we feel the winds of change that Scorpion songs. We feel it, Uranus, wind, Jupiter expanding it. And then Pluto in Aquarius, the moon, the soul, the emotion, collective emotion even. We feel the change. We feel the intensity. And, you know, we feel what Pluto is highlighting in Aquarius, even the dark sides of technology, like that AI stuff, the impersonation, deep fake, or I'm not even sure what the wording is. Such a hot topic. That is definitely Pluto and Aquarius. It's highlighting the dark side of any kind of technology as well, along with the utility and the big mind-blowing innovations. That's also part of the Uranus-Jupiter conjunction and Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Taurus is also farming and agriculture, the protests in Europe, the extremity that it is reaching as we speak. So you can imagine in 20th of April, there is going to be at least one Uranian gesture to shock everyone and everything. And it is preparing, it's preparation mode. And also Mars in the sign of Pisces, getting closer and closer to Saturn. That can be religious extremism. The two malefics, especially Pisces, can be extreme. It's both the divine spirit and the opposite. It is both heaven and hell. You know what I mean? Pisces can represent the depth of the abyss, as well as the most divine realms. It's ether. It can take any shape and form. But this can also have a good side to it. Saturn is like the divine judge, like the police, like the army, the divine army. Mars is the warrior, the activator. So Neptune, and at this week, even at the beginning of the week, even Venus is in Pisces. That can represent divine grace, divine mercy, the best of the spirit, divine good intent and benevolence. So the divine sends, I know this is, understand this symbolically, of course, like a metaphor. Divine police or enforcement, law enforcement. Enough is enough. There is a limit to everything. But how this will play out, no one knows. And, you know, the good side again to this, Mars action, action for compassion, Pisces. Saturn, let us do the right thing. not doing the right thing is unacceptable. Because I know Saturn is not able to bring out its usual Saturnian qualities in Pisces because it is dissolved, but it is still Saturn. You know what I mean? It is still limits. It is still responsibility, duty. Enough is enough. It's it is Saturn which has to decide what can manifest and what cannot. Jupiter and Neptune, the dream and the principle, are not all that much without Saturn. They're just dream. So, and Pisces is the dream. So this will definitely have a dark side to it and a good side as well, which will play out simultaneously in very different ways. We, of course, have to embrace the good side, but it's there. And this can also be a saving grace because this energy is also discipline. We discipline our feeling, our emotion, our psyche. Discipline in a way that we won't let our intrusive thoughts, Mercury, win. We won't, Mercury and Aries, we won't let aggression, Mars, war, hatred win if it would challenge us from within. So for this Mercury retrograde season, this is a really good energy. But I can tell you that this can very well be used for a lot of, and I'm so sorry to use this word, but this is the best, evil. It can also be used for evil, and what is happening in the world right now, chances are it will be, because evil will use this opportunity. And I am not necessarily speaking of, mythical, biblical, esoteric evil, but the evil within people. Saturn in Pisces, uh, confinement, prison system. Mars, things that happen within prisons or things that bring people into prison. So, and this is my last thought about this. I find it very significant that this Jupiter, where it's justice, earthly justice in Taurus, Uranus revolution, this conjunction is simultaneous with the Saturn-Mars conjunction. Saturn, the judge, the limitation, the police in that sense. Not in a literal sense, but especially not literal because it's Pisces. So karma, spirit, morality, that type. And Mars, the warrior, action, and even spiritual action, religious action, stuff like that. These two energies, work side by side, literally side by side. And on both sides of Aries. And Aries is the head, the direction. So can you imagine this divine symmetry almost? We are guided. It's almost like having angel and devil on the shoulders, and these two have to be in balance. Libra, the opposite of Aries. This period is very important for us to guide ourselves. And do not worry. Some people's guidance is the gut. It doesn't have to be rational. For other people's guidance is exactly the GPS rationale. For others is intuitive, for others is emotional. So don't compare yourself to others. As long as the inner animal within you, let's say, is not all that lost, you're found. Or as long as your soul, your spirit is not lost, you're okay. It doesn't matter if you haven't figured it out yet. Whatever that may be, you're still going somewhere, North Node in Aries. If not, your big plans, let's say, that are the guiding force, the compass, then it may be exactly your wounding, Chiron. There's so much here. Okay, so thank you for this moment. On the 4th, well, on one hand, Sun meets the North Node in the sign of Aries, the self, and the luminary factor. And the North Node is exactly our direction forward, one way or another, in whichever house this falls into for you. This gets light, a clarity, a spark of passion, a sense of direction. This steers you somewhere. So I really, really love this energy. However, on the other hand, Mercury already started its backward motion and it's starting to pick up a tiny bit of speed. It, of course, it just went 1 degree, but it is already entering full retrograde phase. But there is this Venus anoretic, a 29 degree of Pisces. Now, as I said, remember the high. Now is the moment of the low. This Venus can be that of disillusionment, disappointment, when the big dream, the illusion, the elation, the high ends. We see it for what it truly is. That doesn't mean it dies or you know what, it's over. It just means that we need to approach it from a more realistic light. Why? Because Aries, time to pursue it or time to do something. It's time for something. So this might be the moment of disillusionment, or when, as I said, a light is shown on the dream and it's not as magical and fairy-like as it once was. But it is not a bad thing, because as Venus moves very, very quickly afterwards into Aries, this energy just changes on itself to a new type of motivation. If it's a disillusionment, then we say, oh, good riddance, because I have so much to do, Aries. Venus, I have so much to fulfill for myself. Or we see that in a real light, that dream, and we see, well, at least now I can start pursuing it, creating it, focusing on it, the reality of it. The rest will come on its own. The magic, the mystery will just come after, you know? So one way or another, it's still positive. And Venus is also conjunct fixed star Seat. So for some people, this can be a bit tearful. You know what I mean? It can be, and we will see this play out on the world stage where, for example, Venus, goods, a cargo ship sinks because that fixed star also rules shipwrecks. So there might be an important loss of cargo, of goods, or there might be something that will lead to a financial crisis happening at sea next week. And Aries, Venus entering, it will cause outrage, anger. So moving on the 5th, Venus, as I said, it moves into the sign of Aries. So this is an energy shift that we are gonna feel hormonally, without a doubt. You know, springtime. This is when the typical expression of springtime. Love is in the air, birds are singing, magnetism takes place, hormones are evoked, we find people much more attractive, things like that. But besides this, we feel our needs. It burns that much urgent. And this is not the hormonal needs. Whatever it is that we need for survival, the self, our needs are very urgent. They feel dire. But besides this, Venus at 0 degrees of Aries is conjunct a very unique and interesting trans-Neptunian object. So I would like to say a planetoid, just that it isn't a planetoid, it is a binary system. Two objects rotating under a I'm not even sure how to explain it, because if you're a physicist listening to this, I'm butchering it. A common point, you know, they don't orbit one another, rather they orbit a common point of gravity, if that makes, so they're a binary system. And the name of this binary is Borasisi and its partner Pabu. Now this planetoid in astrology represents separation. It represents disillusionment, when the dream becomes real and it's not what you expect. But the positive side is that exactly many times disillusionments are the opening for a miracle, because something much better to take the place of what you were illusioned at enters your life. The illusion was the trail, the journey to get you to the right place to the right time. So the separation, the seclusion, the disowning the illusion, the pain of it is eclipsed literally by the new Aries, the fresh breath. The first breath, that's what I want. New and fresh and all that. But at the same time, it can represent that disillusionment, separation is fated. Even the pain of it, it leads you somewhere where you could have never ever stumbled across without it. Something ultimately destined. Now, this like planetoids, Menue and what's Varda, are also part of modern day fiction and mythology. I would like to say mythology because it's in the stars, isn't it? It's actually the name of the object, the astronomical name. So these are fictions. Varda and Menue are Tolkien's creations, and this Borasisi and Pabu, I forgot the name of the author, but these are a novel or something like that, where Borasisi is the sun, Pabu is the moon. The two made love, and the children were not what the sun expected, because they didn't have light of their own. They were cold. They weren't hot like him. So he was disillusioned. He distanced himself from the moon. But the moon was absolutely fine, because she went to one of her children, the earth, and no. Anyway, so you see this binary, and it's binary. There's always a good side here. There's a disillusioned side, but there's always a good. Not everything is as it seems. Sometimes the bad, the disillusionment, is the gateway to the greater good. Venus conjunct this. Why is it important? Because something good will arise from whatever the low was, or whatever you were disillusioned with, or you finally see the alternative of what that big dream was, where it got you already. So this is a really good energy. Now moving on the 6th, this is so iconic even. If you look at this, the moon is sandwiched between Mars, so it's in the midpoint of Mars and Saturn. The moon is the feeling, the emotion. It loves being in the sign of Pisces, dreams, the unconscious. But Mars combustive principle and Saturn limitation principle, it might be between the hammer and the anvil. So something might really boil up our deep moral sense or our sense of compassion. There is something in the air that provokes our soul's response, personally, individually, or collectively, but chances are at the same time both. Venus is sextiling Pluto. That's also intense because something attracts us. And Pluto in Aquarius, something comes from the collective, or friends, or connections, or from the social element, or something that we need, Venus in Aries, or want, desire, is out there. And we know that it's out there. And that gives us power to track it down. For example, internet, social media, applications. The and I'm so sorry to use such a rather vulgar example, but if it's like a hormonal Venus in Aries, the slutty Venus, you can imagine how the best, easiest, best, most Aquarian approach would be an app to do that. So there it is, an empowerment. But at the same time, this empowerment can play out in a very different way, where our needs are dire, and it is the direness of the situation that gives strength, a desperate strength. So there's that as well. And sorry, this moon conjunct Saturn is also part of the reality check. When we become aware of what we can do with the dream, or where our disillusionment is leading us, we're starting to embrace whatever is opening up for us. And finally, at the very end of the week, now this is where we're one day before the total solar eclipse. So you can imagine it is intense. And the moon conjunct Neptune in the sign of Pisces is, and it also, let's say it's a triple conjunction because it also holds an outer sign conjunction with Venus. Moon, our feelings. Neptune, the divine source or the collective illusion. Regardless of what it is, but things are on fire. Venus and Aries. There is intensity. We feel it. Like one, let me give you an example. Dreams. This is because Venus is in Aries, and this is like an outer sign conjunction. This might be the case where you you have like a prophetic dream, but it's literal. You dream of being at a certain place and something unfolding there. Now, what that dream will mean is that you get to that place and things will unfold there just like in the dream. When dreams actually literally show you something, there's no interpretation needed because it is what you saw in the dream. Or something, feelings, intuition, altered state of consciousness, stuff like that is playing out. Or Venus again in Aries, an erotic dream, but whatever happens in the erotic dream might represent the person you're actually gonna meet, literally. So things are very, very intense. And the other thing, Sun meeting Chiron, they're not perfectly conjunct yet because Sun is at 18 degree, Chiron 19 degree, but the wound is illuminated. We integrate it, we see it, we identify the path towards healing. It may not be an easy energy because it can also feel like salt in the wound a little bit, but ultimately understanding it is very, very important. And for that, we need to look at it. As they say as psychologists say, we need to sit and stay with the feeling a little bit. There is that. But because Mercury retrograde is also in the area, it is, on a very wide way conjunct Chiron. So the understanding and the wanting to understand it is there. The processing it is there. And as I said, this energy, and this is part of the larger Mercury retrograde, is when new healing technology, mechanisms, the laws of anything that has to do with healing and new revolutionary is being presented. The sun is very relevant to that because Aries is also the world stage. We see certain new research, technology, alternative healing methods, techniques, whatever. We see it for the first time. We see demonstrations. It appears. So that's a really good energy. And that can play out so beautifully with the moon and Neptune conjunction, a hope that we never even expected. Because let's say there's a condition that is not very, I don't even know how to word this, not, it's not easy to cure, or you don't have a lot of options, or the cure doesn't work for you, and all of a sudden something appears that gives you hope, that makes you want to try it, and it might very well work. So there's this type of energy. So last but not least, this Sun conjunct Chiron, as I said, it opposes Libra. So it will really, really highlight issues in relationships. So this is where it's divorce energy, divorce season, along with, because that's just one, side of the scale. The other side is the healing the connection energy, where for the sake of healing, especially deep instinctual healing, new relationships, connections, friendships, alliances form. You might not have all that much in common with each other intellectually, but something about the other person is deeply healing and vice versa. That is also equally part of the karmic picture. But in a nutshell, pre-eclipse period, it's going to be very, very intense. So the best thing to do is to truly open our eyes and see what the divine mirror is showing us, reflecting at us through relationships, through our own reactions, responses, and through whatever is going on in the world out there. So I really hope this helped. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for all the love and support. And until next time, bye for now.